With the nomination basically secured, the Democratic Party seems to have been given a much-needed boost of energy with a new, younger candidate. The question now is, can Harris keep this momentum going until voters head to the polls in November? Kamala Harris hitting the ground running with her first presidential rally in Milwaukee today.
And you all helped us win in 2020. And in 2024, we will win again.
The same city that just hosted top Republican speakers for the party's three-day national convention that saw Donald Trump formally become the nominee. Trump has been posting up a storm on his social media platform Truth Social. Yeah, all of these posts are from the past 24 hours. This one reading simply, "Lying Kamala Harris destroys everything she touches." Republicans clearly not happy with the 11th hour switch out. A Tennessee Republican calling Harris a diversity, equity, and inclusion hire.
100%. She was a DEI hire.
Today, Speaker Mike Johnson trying to walk that statement back.
This election, as I noted at the outset, is going to be about policies, not personalities. This is not personal with regard to Kamala Harris, and her ethnicity or her gender have nothing to do with this whatsoever.
Meanwhile, Harris also fired back in a speech she made to rally staff members at the campaign headquarters in Delaware last night, reminding listeners of her background as a criminal prosecutor.
In those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
President Biden's voice could be heard over the phone at that speech, speaking for the first time about his decision to step down.
I know yesterday's news was surprising and it was hard for you to hear, but it was the right thing to do.
The president is en route back to the White House today after recovering from COVID-19 at home. He's expected to make a prime-time address tomorrow.
Mr. President, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? How are you feeling?
I know the last 24 hours have been a whirlwind for everyone on this campaign.
Yeah, no kidding. In less than 2 days, Harris has secured support from the amount of delegates she needs to be the nominee, and the final high-profile endorsements she'd been missing.
So now that the process is played out, from the grassroots bottom up, we are here today to throw our support behind Vice President Kamala Harris.
And her campaign raised over $100 million.
We just had the best 24 hours of grassroots fundraising in presidential campaign history.
Not to mention the army of celebrity endorsements, all remixing Harris's infamous coconut tree quote with their songs.
She's a winner, champion.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
Dance.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
Now, it's probably not what Harris wants to be known for, but it's better than other politicians.
Pokemon go to the polls.
Harris has even gotten approval from Queen Bee herself to use the song Freedom during her campaign. It seems the Democrats have found a much-needed infusion of energy and momentum, helping to bring out the youth vote. Now the question is if Harris can keep it going. With a new Democratic candidate on the ticket, will Donald Trump and his party change up their strategy heading into November's election? To discuss, we're joined by Riley Boyd, spokesperson for strategist group Republican Voters Against Trump. Thanks for joining us, Riley.
Thanks for having me.
How are Republican lawmakers reacting to Biden dropping out of the race and Harris now having enough support to clinch the nomination?
Republicans are absolutely scrambling now that Joe Biden has dropped out of the race and Kamala Harris is almost certain to be the Democratic presidential nominee. The Trump campaign built their entire apparatus, their messaging, their strategy around Joe Biden running for president. And they made this campaign about age and mental acuity. Now they have to run a campaign against Kamala Harris, which they weren't expecting to do. And Kamala Harris is a much younger, more energetic candidate. I think the Trump campaign is absolutely going to have to change the way that they've been doing things. And they're going to have to completely rethink their campaign. What we've seen from Trump this week is that immediately after Joe Biden dropped out, he posted on Truth Social, I think it was about a dozen or more times, and he wasn't even mentioning Harris. It's clear that Trump has been completely thrown by Joe Biden dropping out of the race. So I think he's still getting his footing on terms of how he wants to make the case against Kamala Harris. I think we could see more rallies, more postings from Trump. He's not someone who can really be kept quiet. He's going to put himself out there and get back to talking to his supporters and in the media. We'll just have to wait and see.
What do you expect Trump's campaign to look like moving forward, and how does it change from right now?
I think the Trump campaign is going to try and figure out which specific issues will stick with Harris that they can hold her against, like immigration, which has been a weak point for her. But right now, the Trump campaign really doesn't know what messaging is going to work against Harris. That's what they need to figure out in the coming days and weeks. And that's why it's so important that Kamala Harris get out in front of that right now and reintroduce herself to voters as a presidential candidate, not as Joe Biden's vice president.
When it comes to the border, can Harris get ahead of Republicans' attacks?
Well, I think on immigration, while it is a weak point for her, she needs to remind voters that she's going to have her own policies going forward, right? She has to be the spokesperson as the vice president of Joe Biden's campaign and his administration. But now that she's running for president, she can make the issue more her own and she can go after it directly. I think we're going to see in the coming weeks, she's going to stake out positions on a number of issues and go really hard at them, specifically an issue like abortion, which Kamala Harris has already made a key issue of hers as vice president, is one that she's going to be able to go really hard at the Trump campaign at, and one that they certainly weren't expecting Joe Biden to go super hard at.
How do you see the debate playing out in September?
Well, I think Harris has a great case to make at the debate. She can run as the prosecutor prosecuting the case against a convicted felon. I think that's going to be absolutely key for Harris going forward. She has such an opportunity right now to reintroduce herself to voters, to reinvigorate, the anti-Trump coalition that defeated Donald Trump in 2020, because that's what's going to be key to putting her in office in November. And I think at the debate, she just needs to go hard at Trump on issues like his convictions, like his indictments, January 6th. She has so much to pull from, and she can really make that case that she is prosecuting the case against a convicted felon.
Should Trump be worried about voters jumping ship now that Biden isn't the nominee?
I absolutely think the Trump campaign should be worried about voters going to Harris that maybe couldn't get there on Joe Biden. We call a lot of these swing voters the double haters. They were really down on both Joe Biden and Donald Trump. A lot of them didn't want to vote for Trump under any circumstances, but they just weren't sure they could get there on Joe Biden, especially with how old he was. But now that you have Harris, who is a much younger candidate, you're seeing a lot more momentum, a lot more enthusiasm about this election now that it's no longer a rerun of the 2020 election. I think Kamala can absolutely make the case to these swing voters and to these anti-Trump center-right moderates that she is the candidate they need to support, that she will defeat Donald Trump, and that's what's most important. And I think that is a case she can make.
Thanks so much for joining us today, Riley.
Thank you.